Live stream audio test 1 2.
Afternoon, everybody. Apologies for my lateness and lack of organisation to be ready for 2:30. So good afternoon and welcome to a meeting of the Executive of North Somerset Council. I'll now do my low-cost airline speech. I would like to welcome everyone to this face-to-face meeting with the Executive in the new Council Chamber. There is an option to join the meeting via Microsoft Teams. For those councillors and officers who do not feel yet comfortable attending in person or are unable to do so, they will be able to partake but not be in attendance formally, and if a member of the Executive will be unable to vote or count towards the quorum of the meeting. We are streaming today's meeting live on the internet, and a recorded version will be available to view within 48 hours on the North Somerset Council website. Thank you. Okay, so welcome everybody. We'll start the formal agenda now. Item number 1 is addresses by members of the public. I've not been notified of any. There are none. Apologies for absence. There are several. We have Councillor Mike Bell, Councillor Steve Bridger and Councillor Catherine Gibbons, I believe, are here in a virtual world, but not physically. Are there any other apologies for absence? No. Okay, thank you. And declarations of disclosable pecuniary interest under Standing Order 37. Colleagues, are there any? I hear none. Item number 4 is the minutes of the Executive meeting on the 2nd of February for confirmation of the correct record. Can I have somebody propose there a correct record, please? Councillor Mark Caniford, seconded by Councillor Mike Solomon. Are we all happy to accept those? Yes, we are, so I can sign those. The next one is the extraordinary meeting on the 14th of March, which I wasn't at. I was on the Tyneside Riviera at the National Fire Conference. Do we have a proposal that they are an accurate record? Mark Caniford, thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Ash Cartman, thank you. Are we all those in favour of approval? That's passed, thank you.
Chairman, if I can just update on those minutes, as you'll be aware, the meeting concluded that officers should go away and work further with prospective contractor. That has been done. We don't need to report back to Executive. The contract will continue, and there have been some changes agreed with the contractor, but those are capable of being signed off under delegated director authority.
Thank you. I'm trying to sign very quickly, but not succeeded in the gap. Okay, so item number 5 is non-executive council addresses, and I'm not aware of any. No. Item 6 is matters referred to the Executive and not dealt with elsewhere on the agenda. There are none, I believe. No. And items for number 7, West of England sub-region, items not dealt with elsewhere on this agenda. I'm not aware of any. The only point is that there is a call-in of a decision of the Joint Committee, which I believe is on the 3rd of May at 2 p.m. at City Hall in Bristol, and the full papers are available on the WECA website, and I would hope that the 3 members of North Somerset Council who are on that scrutiny panel will be attending or confirming whether there's anything they need to help them in that work. I don't believe there's anything else. Item number 8 is the forward plan, which is for noting. Are we happy to note, colleagues? I don't see anybody else commenting. Thank you. Jeff Richardson, are you happy with the forward plan in your area? No comments?
I'll take it to the chairs of the panels.
Lovely.
I'll bring back any comments.
Thanks very much. So that's for noting. We go on to the first substantive item, then number 9, which is the customer service strategy. Councillor Cartman.
Thank you, Don. Thank you, Leader. So this is the customer service strategy for 22 to 27. Really pleased to introduce this. It's one of those key kind of touch point things that many residents kind of experience when they deal with the council. So it's very important that we get this right. The key kind of theme is the ongoing transition, I think, towards a digital offering to our residents, and that's driven partly because A, that's how they want to engage with us, and B, because it is more cost effective. And if there's a theme that runs through this, is that we are restrained in terms of the finance we've got to really revolutionise the service. And this is an approach more of evolution than revolution, but it's a really very, very good document. I think we have listened to the concerns of members on this, and they will note there's an appendix in there which details how we are looking to change some of our face-to-face services to extend the provision of face-to-face services out of just the town hall here to cover areas in the north of the district through the use of libraries as well. And I really welcome that, and that's a really positive move. So I think I'll just open it to questions or comments from my colleagues or anyone else at this point.
Thank you. Are there any officer comments before I go into, okay. Members, I can see Jeff Richardson. Is there anybody in the virtual world asking?
Councillors Bridger, Gibbons and Holland.
Okay, so Jeff, please.
Thanks, Chair. I'd welcome this strategy as well, and obviously like to thank Simone Woolley for the enormous amount of work she's put into it. The thing that disappoints me about it is the lack of ambition in year one. What we're actually doing in year one does appear to be, even if it isn't, not a lot. And you will see from section 5.3 in the report that the PCOM reviewed this, and it was a very strong recommendation from those the members of that PCOM committee that we would prioritise the work in this area. In particular, I would say that if we're expecting people to use our online offers, then we ought to be making those better as soon as we possibly can, because that's a precursor for people moving over to use them. If you try and use the web service now, it isn't the greatest experience, and I'm sure everybody would admit that. So I think we need to get that right before we expect people to start using it. Thank you.
Chairman, I wonder before, if there's further contribution from Councillor Richardson, maybe a different microphone. That one seems to be humming, particularly on the Teams. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think the comments around the website are well made. And I know that in conversations I've had with officers that they're equally as concerned as I am, I think, in terms of how we take that forward. I guess it's just a question of A, resource, and B, what we can deliver. So Ash, I don't know if you have any comments on that before I go to the next question.
No, I agree, and I'd agree with Jeff as well. When we can have a look at the priorities and the action plan that goes forward, there's a detailed action plan to come forward, and welcome some input on that.
Okay, on in the virtual world, I've got Catherine Gibbons.
Thank you. Can you hear me all right? Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, right, sorry. Yeah, I really welcome this as well. I just wonder if Councillor Cartman could reassure me that with the sort of enhanced effort for some face-to-face meetings for those who aren't able to engage digitally, that we'll be able to communicate to them adequately how this will happen, because I have quite a lot of older members in my ward who, being cut off from all the ways we usually communicate stuff, they don't know what they could be doing. So I'm just wondering, is there, I may have missed it, the plan in there to make sure that we actually tell these people who need to use the face-to-face services how they can do it and make sure that they get that information?
Yeah, there is scope to publicise some of the face-to-face meeting times and slots across the district. Most of those will be by appointment, but what we're doing at the same time is making sure that, for example, in the town hall, we've got a better concierge service, so if people do drop in, they can be signposted straight away, or perhaps have an appointment booked straight away so people can come back. And of course, the telephone service still exists, and we're working to improve that as well, where people can still ring in, even if they're not perhaps fully digitally able.
Thank you. Could I just maybe suggest that each ward councillor, all of us, gets a little sort of list of bullet points that we can tell residents when they contact us how they can get in touch?
Yeah, I can send that. I think there's a press release going out. I can't remember if there's some things in there, but I'll recirculate an email with some bullet points.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Steve Bridger.
Thanks, Don, and thanks, Ash. Yeah, equally, I wholeheartedly support the paper and the intent. Obviously, we need to deliver it, and I also wanted to focus a bit on the face-to-face proposal that's outlined in the appendix that people are talking about. I know that was a particular concern for elected members, across party. Particularly if council agrees next month to leave Castlewood. Obviously that's for different reasons really, but and obviously we know that the actual face-to-face service there was used by a very small number of residents, but the proposal at the moment is framed as a pilot. I wouldn't, picking up on previous points, I wouldn't want that to be interpreted as setting that up to fail. I think we want and need to turn our libraries into community hubs. I think we've started that, haven't we? Cleveland, for example. But Catherine's point was something I wanted to raise too. We need to be really creative. I think how we ensure residents know what the offer is and where they can access that support, particularly if it's quite sort of fleeting. They wouldn't want to miss a chance of dropping into the library and then have to wait a subsequent week or two. So it's potentially really positive that people will be able to access that face-to-face support closer to where they live. But we do need to follow through on that. So pick up on Jeff's point, who I think asked that we champion this as a priority. I'd certainly put my hand up for that. Jeff interpreted that as a lack of ambition, but I'm not sure. But we do need to follow through on this. Thanks, Chair.
Nicola Holland, I think you want to speak, Nicola.
Thank you, Don. Thanks, Ash, for this. And with regard to, obviously what everybody else has said about the face-to-face is incredibly important. Thinking about what you said in the policy and strategy regarding the digital first issues, I'm thinking about how to make things more cost-effective, more so that we can spend more money on the actual face-to-face appointments. Can we please get something going regarding a report it app in line with something that other councils use to great effect, so that our residents have a much easier way of contacting us when there are issues. When you think about the good old-fashioned phrase, a stitch in time saves nine, if people find it easy to report issues, they will report them sooner, and then we can sort things out sooner. Just something as simple as broken glass, dog mess in the parks, all these things. It is incredibly awkward to report when you're out and about. By the time you get home, it's forgotten about. If you're out and about and you have to use your the My Account setup, the whole thing is just time-consuming, it's awkward, and people don't bother. If we had an easy system set up so that people could report issues, we'd be able to sort things out faster, and then we could actually spend the money that we have for customer services dealing with people who need face-to-face appointments. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicola. I can't see any other hands up in the virtual world. Okay. Bridget Petty.
Thank you. I also welcome all the work that's been done to prepare this strategy, and I welcome the ambitions that exist in this, because we do know that across North Somerset we have some set of demographics that engage with the council more frequently, and we have other demographics that are living busy lives and have no call to use the council services except for maybe once a year or once every other year even. So I think that when people choose to come to our website to seek answers, they need to receive a fit for purpose experience and user experience. So I welcome that we are preparing to have, a website that works well for those who want to use it. When we talk about the pilot scheme, which I really welcome and I think is really important, some of the points that both Catherine and Steve made, I'd like us to think about how we communicate that as well through our work. And I think that North Somerset Life is an excellent example because, of course, North Somerset Life arrives through every single person's door. I also think that working with our town and parish councillors as our trusted partners, enables them to have that information and them to share that out with others. So I thought I'd just flag those two things. Really supportive of the work here, and I think it's important that our residents know how to communicate to the council, how to get information. So I welcome the piece of work identified here. Thank you.
Okay. Mark Hannaford.
There's just a quick 3 points I would like to make, Chairman. And the first one is, of course, I think I welcome to hear, I welcome what Ash Cartman says around our hubs and the fact that one of the concerns, hasn't it, been for many a year, not just during COVID, is that people who come into the centre, even though they might not be able to have the answers they want there and then, they feel like we have engaged, and that is absolutely essential. I think the thing which is missing, and it might not be missing, and Ash can put me correct in a moment, is that even though we got measures to see the outcomes, we actually haven't got any targets or KPIs. We've got a plan for 5 years, and we won't know where we are between year 1 and year 5, or whether we're reaching the targets that we really would wish to meet. And I think that it would be very sensible to challenge our services to make sure we have targets through that period, whether they be through KPI. I'm sure the scrutiny panel will challenge things if they don't happen fast enough, but I do believe the executive would also like to know whether we're hitting certain levels of service that we should be hitting throughout this period.
Ash, do you want to come back on that?
Yeah, I'll come back on that. I think my understanding is the targets, the specific targets through the corporate plan are kind of coming through. I look to Simone to confirm. She's nodding whether you want to add something in on that.
Yes, so in terms of the strategy itself, I'm just in the currently creating an action plan, and the action plan will have specific targets and milestones attached to it. So we will monitor that through, I think it's CSDLT. Did we agree at CLT this morning? So it's either at CLT or at CSDLT. So we're just organising how the governance of the strategy will take place, but there will be very clear targets and milestones throughout the strategy.
Lovely, thank you, Simone. And that's Simone Woolley, who's the author of the paper that we were considering, if anybody doesn't know that. And as ever, in the world of acronyms, I'm not 100% sure what she said after that, but we'll struggle on.
It's the leadership team meeting.
All right. Translation, Amy?
Yes, happy to. Thank you, Chair. So the Corporate Services Directorate Leadership Team, or the Corporate Leadership Team. So obviously the strategy will report into me as Corporate Services Director, but we'll make sure that the action plan and KPIs are picked up through the performance framework, which is available to executive members and also will be published on our website. Thank you.
And that's Amy Webb, who's our Corporate Services Director. Any more questions, comments before we go for a process? So, Ash, I presume you're going to propose this?
Yes, please, if
Do I see a seconder? Mark Hannaford, thank you. So all those in favour, the recommendation has disappeared from my screen because it's gone to time out, is that the Executive endorses the principles, aims and activities of the Council's customer service strategy for the period 2022 to 2027 and approves the adoption of the strategy. So you're proposing that. Mark Hannaford seconding that. All those in favour, please. That is unanimous. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Simone. And now we move on to this is going to be more challenging. Item number 10, the consultation outcomes revised budget for the expansion and the creation of a second site for the Baytree School, which I believe Catherine Gibbons is going to present remotely. I feel about like a Eurovision Song Contest jury here. Can you come in, Catherine?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay. I'll try to do this and I'll endeavour to do it without coughing too much, which is, I know, annoying for everybody. Right, so as members will know, the Baytree School is the only school in North Somerset that provides education to children with really profound and complex learning difficulties. And it needs the capacity to offer more places because we have a statutory and a moral obligation to make sure that we provide education for children with SEND. And the current site, as you all know, is not fit for purpose in that respect. It's no longer capable of meeting many of the physical needs of the pupils. It can't accommodate a lift. And, well, I've visited it. Those of you who have will know how much actual physical equipment many of the children need. And the corridors are just bursting with this, and they're doing their very best. So it's an absolute necessity that we increase the capacity of the school. So I'm here today to ask that the Executive approves the expansion and the creation of the second site for Bay Tree School, which is currently at the campus, and we want to expand a provision for a new site at Brookfield Walk in Clevedon with effect from September the 1st at the earliest. We also need the Executive to approve additional capital budget spending of 3.202 million as noted within the financial section of this report, which is lengthy and very detailed, so that the full spend will be 18.297.020. It's in your papers, so I don't need to go through it in enormous detail. And the reasons why this increase has happened are many and complex. As you'll remember from the decision we took in September 19 and January 2022, we've had a number of challenges over the location of the second site. Planning approval had to be determined by application to the Secretary of State. There was an unsuccessful challenge over a town and village green request. And in addition, we had faced a judicial review, which was both through written and oral hearings, and both of which were unsuccessful. So obviously, we had to note the delay of this project and took the opportunity to do further consultations, which are included in this paper. And this was, we wanted to make sure that there were any changes in responses between the initial decisions we made and the initial consultation in this were noted and could be fully considered. And they're there for all of you to look at and consider. I won't go on too long because I'm sure that there will be questions and we're here to answer them. And I know I've got Naomi here as well, who'll be able to be much more expert in dealing with some of the challenges around the actual building. So I just repeat the recommendations that I'm asking you to support today, that we approve the expansion of the second site for Bay Tree School, the campus Highlands, to extend it from a 72-place provision to a 120-place provision, located both at the existing site and at the Brookfield Walk Clevedon site, and that the Executive approves the additional capital budget that I mentioned beforehand, which is outlined in the papers. I really, really do hope that we can get this project off the ground, because apart from the fact that we need these spaces, we are also currently having children travelling long distances across North Somerset. And it's been shown in numerous reports that travel time and the stresses involved for these children has a negative effect on their overall outcomes. So if we can provide this extra site and have children not travelling up and down the motorways for hours to the same extent that they might have to now and not going out of area, it will be good for them. I think mostly about the cost to our children rather than the financial cost, though I appreciate both are incredibly important and sensitive for this council. So I'll leave it at that because I know you will have read the papers in great depth and we'll be ready for taking any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. I mean, as you're not here, I'm going to propose that we accept the recommendation that you read out. Mark Hannaford will second. I would echo your comments about this as a massively important resource for some of our most vulnerable residents in the whole of North Somerset and the impact of what they're having to go through now, particularly in terms of travel. So do we have any questions? Mark?
Again, Chairman, not really a question but a comment, and the disappointment because of the delays this has had and the cost to the public that's been. But I think it's really important, and I congratulate Catherine and her team around the fact that only around 10% of those who responded to the survey were actually connected to the school. And therefore, when you take out those who didn't like the scheme, about 86% of our general public cared about those children, even though they had no contacts with them. And I think that says a great deal about the residents of North Somerset, that they were willing to get involved in a consultation where they had no direct benefit from it. Most consultations that go on in North Somerset, you only get involved if you think it's going to benefit or hurt you. So I congratulate the whole team for those responses.
Thank you. I'm not seeing
Thank you.
Oh,
I just think thank you to Mark.
Oh,
I would just echo that. I think it's testament to the people of North Somerset, and also, to me, highlights what is our MP doing in opposing it when the vast majority of respondents support it. And it's also good for the vulnerable people in North Somerset who desperately need this facility.
thank you. So I don't see any other requests. Oh, Jeff.
I don't think that's an improvement, Chair, to be honest, but I've moved anyway. I'd just like to say, like everybody else, I welcome the fact that the school's going to be built and for the people it's going to be built for, which is great. I just wanted to ask if there's still, because originally there was a good financial case for this as well, because the costs versus out of area movement were there. Is that still the case?
Sally
Sure,
Varley's going to answer the technical question.
Yeah. So
Thank you, Sally.
obviously, the additional cost will mean that it will take longer for us to actually pay back any of the costs. But I think when we've looked at a high level at the numbers of children that we think will benefit, then I think it's probably about an 18 years payback period, assuming that actually we're only looking at sort of new children that are going in. If there are children who sort of are transitioning from one phase to another, who, if it's right for them, could leave their existing school to move to Baytree, and I will stress it would need to be right for the child, then it's possible that that could be reduced. But our financial colleagues have done some modelling, and with the uplift, they think it's between 18 and 19 years.
Thanks, Alan. It sounds to me like that's a conservative, very conservative estimate, actually. Thank you.
It should possibly doesn't reflect the additional costs of transport, which will be significant in terms of what we're doing currently in terms of moving people to alternative sources of education. So I was going to go for the vote then, colleagues. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. And thank you, Sally, and your team for the report. And we move on to item number 10, which is item number 11, which is the North Somerset housing strategy. I think, Mark Hannaford, you're going to present this in lieu of Mike Bell.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I have been asked to, but I think Matt Lenny's here to answer any questions, if any questions are thrown at me. Councillor Bell has asked me to move this recommendation and report in his absence today. The housing strategy is an important and ambitious new action plan to deliver affordable homes in sustainable neighbourhoods, improve and make the best use of existing homes, to provide solutions, support, and also the choice of housing that people want and their needs. The strategy cuts across a number of council teams and service areas, including the planning policy in the local plan, housing solutions, private rented housing, and also the homelessness and rough sleeper services. Councillor Bell has asked me to thank all the officers involved in developing this strategy, the Adult Services and Housing Policy and Scrutiny Panel, and the members of public and the partners who have engaged in this consultation. So, if we get straight to the chase, the Executive are asked to approve the housing strategy for 2022 to 2027 as set out in Appendix A for the publication and implication. That the Deputy Leader of the Council and Executive Member for Adult Services, Health and Housing is given delegated authority to make required minor changes to the strategy prior to publication and to agree to regular updates. So I think the latter is to make sure that if there are any small changes, Chairman, that Mike Bell can get them implemented quickly. Thank you. So I propose that.
Thank you. So you're proposing that, Mark. Does he a seconder? Mike Solomon seconding that. Are there any officer comments, first of all? No? Are there any members in the virtual world? Are there any members really physically here want to comment? I'll go to Jeff first.
Thanks, Chair. I just had one question about the details in there. On page 12, it would appear that the rental costs are higher in Western than in North Somerset, which surprised me somewhat. I don't know if it was somebody could comment on that. And I was wondering what the relationship of this particular document is to the development strategy for council-owned land that is going out for consultation at the moment. Thank you.
If I just I'll come on with part of that, only because my responsibilities are around the local plan. The local plan and the strategy around assets are completely separate, so there probably isn't. But if any land in the asset strategy is identified, then this strategy would very clearly sit within those decisions. But I don't know if it's an answer for the other question from someone.
That was a question on the rental values, which, yes, I guess. Yeah, you were surprised that it's higher in Western.
I have to agree, I was surprised on the 3-bedroomed house as well, but I wouldn't be in a position to challenge it. In terms of 1-2s, that sounds about right in the private sector, certainly.
In actual fact, I think, Jeff, the answer to your question is almost irrelevant, because if we look at the prices in 2022, they are completely different to these anyway, aren't they, and significantly higher. So perhaps, Matt, as part of the minor changes, that little diagram could be updated and just confirm the information and perhaps just circulate it round in due course. I mean, thanks for challenging that, Jeff. Hayley Verico, our director, is online. Can you answer that question, Hayley? It's a bit unfair to ask you this.
No,
Sash?
That's absolutely fine. There is a mistake on page 12 that was highlighted to me just as we came into the meeting, and that will be rectified. So apologies for that.
Is it the wrong way round?
Yes.
Okay. But I think it would be useful this is a document going through to 2027, if we could update those to the most recent figures we have, because I know that people complain to me very frequently about the massive surge in inflation in rental prices. Okay, I'll leave that to officers to do. Is that okay, Hayley? Thank you.
Yes, that's fine. Thank you.
Mike Solomon.
Yeah, just a question about the minor decisions under delegated powers. Who decides what a minor decision is?
Ultimately, me.
We contain within the very spending limits. Ash?
Yeah, I've got a question. I mean, I think this is very pertinent up in the north of the district, where the housing numbers are very contentious. And I think one of the questions I get is, how are we going to deliver better, more sustainable and affordable housing? And this strategy goes a long, long way. So I think it's going to be very important in demonstrating that the council's doing its part. My question relates to the quality of new builds. There doesn't seem to be that much in the document on it, which is because my understanding is the quality of new builds would come through the planning documents in terms of the ability we've got to drive up quality. Is that right? Okay, thank you. Yeah.
And Chairman, I think it would be appropriate to mention the fact that we are testing the fact that we're looking for 40% affordable housing on these developments, and I think that is a good step change by this council. And you're quite right, Ash, the fact is that the suite of planning documents that sit beneath the local plan will be challenging the standard of housing that we want. And I think we've made it very clear that we want the standard of housing to be much better than what we have seen over the past 3 or 4 decades.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I'd also perhaps echo the fact that if we are to meet some of our climate emergency imperatives, the design and delivery of high quality housing is a key part of that, given the appalling state of our current stock. Okay, so are there any other questions or comments? Oh, Bridget.
I think, like Ashley Cartman, we have this situation. I also represent a ward in the north of the district, and while we have many residents asking us very pertinent and appropriate questions about the number of houses that are being expected to be delivered in that area, I also have residents pointing out that there are a number of empty properties across our district, and while they don't number 18,000 or 20,000, they are significant. You walk down a number of streets and you will always find another one. I know this document suggests that we will make better use of empty properties, but I'm really looking for the kind of how and how fast, because I think this has been something that Green councillors has raised in the past. So I'm really keen to see action on empty properties. I'm also keen to see action on private rented properties and how we can ensure that those tenants are getting a much better quality deal and not having to live in what I understand to be at times really appalling circumstances. I think that we as a council need to take an active part in trying to improve the situation for those living in rented properties that are of a poor standard and that often lead to either extremely high energy bills or just poor health as a result of poor quality housing. So I welcome this document, and I look forward to real results coming out of it, so that it's beyond words but actually actions as well. Thank you.
My understanding is, in terms of empty properties, that we charge the maximum premium we can on, I think it's 200 or 300% council, 200% council. Well, I'd make it like it to be 1,000% personally, but yeah, we've done as much as we can by law allowed to make the premium on it, and we also, our housing team have officers devoted to trying to get empty properties available for rent. So I think we do as much as we possibly can. Sadly, people aren't forced to make these properties available, and even hiking the council tax doesn't seem to make a sufficient impact on that. And in terms of the overall thing, I think we all share that concern around the quality of housing. You know, when you consider you've probably got more legal rights when you go and buy a toy from the toy shop than when you rent a property as your family home. But sadly, if I had the powers, we would do it in North Somerset today. But I think it relies on national government to actually deliver on some of the promises they've made, particularly on Section 21 evictions and that type of thing. So any other comments, queries? I was going to go to the vote. Oh, Catherine Gibbons.
Sorry, thank you. I was just going to, again, I welcome it also and echo some of what Bridget has said. And also just to touch upon the issue of homelessness and particularly rough sleeping. I mean, I'm reading the recommendations and the programme for that, but I again have to, as Councillor Petty or Bridget said, you know, want to see the results, because only this year Western Town Council voted to give £50,000 to organisations that aim to work with those who are rough sleeping, because the problem is still very, very real. And I suppose it's about the how. How do we actually get people into accommodation and get them to maintain it? That is the problem. I fully accept that some of the people we're dealing with in Western have been in accommodation. They haven't been able to stay. They've got all sorts of problems. So I suppose it's around, you know, wanting some reassurance about the sort of wraparound care that these people will get if we get them into a property, so that they don't just feel unable to cope and end up back on the streets again. Thank you.
Who wants to answer that? I'm not sufficiently knowledgeable to know. Hayley or Matt?
Yes, thank you. We are also updating the homelessness and prevention and rough sleeping strategy, which will answer many of those questions, Councillor Gibbons. But I think it also goes back to what we know about rough sleeping, and a number of those unfortunate people in those situations have also got addiction problems. And we are working with Matt and regulatory services to see how we can better provide that wraparound support, because that is very often the point of failure for these people. So we will update you further on that when we update the new rough sleeping strategy, but it is key in our thoughts at the moment.
Thank you very much.
And Chairman, on page 25 of the report, there is quite a detailed actions and projects that are going on, which I noticed.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, that's what I was reading.
So I was going to go for the vote by proposer and seconder. All those in favour? Thank you very much. That's unanimous. Thank you, colleagues, and thank you, officer colleagues, for producing the report and answering the questions. So we'll now move on to item number 12, which is the public space protection orders, which Mike Solomon is going to present in lieu of Mike Bell. And my understanding is that there might be a slight amendment to the recommendation. So,
yes, thank you, Don. Yeah, another acronym, PSPO, but you've explained what it means. These were introduced by the government, I believe, in 2014 as a way of handling certain areas of antisocial behaviour and giving us some powers. I think we put them in place in 2017, and what we're looking at is to make a few changes. So this will be in effectively Section 3 of the report. We want to set out some new PSPOs, but we want to make some exceptions. So the exception being 3.4.2, fires on Western Seafront. We're not looking at this stage including those as being part of a PSPO. 3.4.4, again, feeding of birds on Western Seafront. This was really brought about by the fact that we do have a few people, and it is only a few really, that will take bags and bags of food and feed the gulls, and the gulls are causing us issues, obviously, because of pollution in the sea, which is just part of nature and not a lot we can do about it. But where they're feeding the birds in large quantities, it does cause an issue, but I think that is really hard to police against. And we just need to keep working with these people to try and persuade them that it's slightly antisocial to do that. And then 3.4.5, antisocial use of watercraft, and that again applies to some of these fairly mindless people occasionally that will come into the bay on a windsurfer at high speed. I've seen them do it as well with these jet skis, and it's just thoughtlessness, but we're at this stage in time, we're not thinking about putting any PSPOs in place to legislate against those people. And then the last one is 3.5.1, swimming in Portishead Marina. I know this is controversial to a lot of people that have asked for some form of PSPO to be put in place, where you've got a lot of young people, perhaps in the summer months on warm days, jumping into the marina, which frankly is quite dangerous. I mean, it's dangerous to get out of. But however, again, Mike Bell and myself, we have discussed this, and we don't want to be seen necessarily as the fun police. And the point I've made in the past is that people can swim in the sea, and I unfortunately was on the seafront many years ago when two young people decided they'd go for a swim late at night. We could hear them shouting out at sea at Western, but the helicopter didn't get to them, and unfortunately they both drowned. So these things can happen, so we just need to make sure we have plenty of signage up, and we need to make sure that we do try to educate these young people against this. So those are the exceptions, but apart from that, I would like to see the other recommendations go through. Thank you.
Okay. So just for clarity then, if you look at our papers, then the recommendation is to approve the changes to the PSPO set out in section 3 with the exception of 3.4.2, fires on Western Seafront, 3.4.4, feeding birds on Western Seafront, 3.4.5, antisocial use of watercraft on Western Seafront, and 3.5.1, swimming in Portishead Marina, which will not be implemented at this time. So do I see a proposer for that amended recommendation? Mike Solomon, do I see a seconder? Mark Caniford, thank you. So we'll go for any questions. Any questions from officers, first of all? In the virtual world, I think we have Ruth Jacobs. Ruth?
Now, can you hear me?
I can, perfectly.
Right, wonderful. I'm having a problem in my ward at the moment with these orders for dog walkers. There are no signs whatsoever. Matt Lenny knows what I'm talking about because I've been in contact with him. I think it's absolutely disgraceful that there are no signs anywhere telling people not to walk their dogs. I just wanted to make the point because it's not mentioned here.
Okay, thank you. You've mentioned Matt Lenny, who is the relevant director. Yep. Did you want to elaborate, Matt, for everybody else's benefit?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So, yes, we have been in contact about the particular issues being raised by a number of ward members. So we're looking at that at the moment to try and see what we can do to try and improve the communication with local residents to explain what's permitted in different areas. I think it is an ongoing challenge, and it's something we need to communicate regularly to people just to try and get that balance right between being able to walk your dog, but also keeping things like particularly football pitches and other things safe of any risk around, dog mess. Thank you.
Thank you for your help, Black.
Mike Solomon?
Yeah, I just want to come in on signage because this comes up an awful lot. It comes up with people walking dogs and saying that aren't on leads. They hadn't seen the signage. We do have a lot of signage, and unfortunately, I'm not sure about this case, but some people do have signage blindness, and they'll often say we didn't see any signs. And they are there, so I think we do need to check into this to make sure that there really aren't any signs there, and if there are, then we need to
There
rectify
aren't.
that.
I've been out and round and there aren't.
Lovely, thank you, Ruth. Nicola Holland. Nicola Holland, come in.
Sorry, my tablet went a bit screwy. No, with regard to signage, I'd like to say thank you for reconsidering the issue around Portishead Marina and Parish Wharf. But we do need signage explaining just how dangerous it is swimming in that water. I really can't understand how people want to swim in water in a marina, especially an enclosed one that's only that isn't exactly freshly cleaned every day. It has locks on it, lock gates on it. It's not the freshest water in the world. Why anybody wants to swim in there, I don't know. We need more signage explaining to the young people exactly what it is they're getting into, literally. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll pass that back to officers for consideration. I mean, it's also an ex-working dock, isn't it? We've moved in lots and lots of coal, and there was a rather challenging chemical factory just down the road from there. So I'm not sure why people would want to swim there, but that's not my choice, is it? Because I'm not going to join them. Okay, is there any other further debate? Oh, Mark Caniford.
Just one question, Chairman, and I think it's right and proper to say that if these some of these PSPOs have been removed, and members of the public are concerned about that, they should continue to represent their views to councillors and to officers or consultations and online, simply because just because we've taken them out in the current time doesn't mean they will stay out on a permanent basis. It's just that we don't feel that those necessarily quite appropriate at this time, but they might become so later.
Okay, lovely. Bridget Petty.
Thank you. So reading through this report, I think that one of the reasons that the reason that I'm happy that we've removed the Portishead comment is because when you look at the consultation results, it wasn't clear from the responses that there was the wealth of support to make this a public order. So I feel like we looked at the responses that we received and then made a measured and appropriate decision based on that. I think that there are times when an antisocial order is appropriate, and there are times when that action isn't always going to result in the change that we want to see in our communities. And we want a well-functioning community that respects young people, older people, people who walk dogs, people who don't walk dogs, so that we can all live harmoniously in our areas, in our towns and in our countryside. I also welcome the fact that where it says that those who are dog walkers who collect the feces in bags, that actually if they then disregard that bag in the countryside, in the hedgerows, that is littering, and that should be enforced. Because it is absolutely one of the most disgusting things that any of us can find as walking along, is when someone has disregarded a bag of something disgusting hanging from a bush, and you wonder at what point is the dog poo fairy going to come along and solve these problems for our community. So thank you for all the work done in this, and I know it's not always easy to find the right balance of the tools that the council has at its disposal with how we hope that people will behave, treat our countryside, treat our landscape and respect our areas. I also recognise that one of the problems that we have with Western Beach is that we have lots of different users, we have birds, we have wildlife, and we would all like to see cleaner waters so that we can have our children play, have the ability to swim, but we don't know which is the right tool at this time with which to change the landscape of that waters and encourage that to be cleaner waters. So if people can continue to take their litter away with them, collect their dog feces, then we are all working towards a more pleasant area for all of us to enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Robert Payne next.
Yes, thank you. I think the original proposal to ban the barbecues on Western Beach would be rather disproportionate, and I'm pleased to see that has been taken out. However, it is a real problem where people leave disposable barbecues on the beach and other rubbish that goes with it. So I hope that the council will do all it can, do more in future to deal with that under littering and in particular.
Mike Solomon.
Yeah, that's a good point that Robert's made, and the way things work at the moment is that you must have your barbecue off the ground on the beach. If you're using disposable barbecues, you should not put them in our bins, you should take them away. And if you're using coals, you shouldn't just bury them under the sand again, you should take them away. So that's all in place at the moment, and I guess there are ways we could enforce that if we find people are abusing that wholesale. The other thing that's been introduced here that isn't highlighted, which is very useful, is that we will now be able to force people to give their names. If we stop them at the moment, if we ask them for a name, they can say, we're not giving you one. And they're quite within their rights to do that if they've been stopped for some form of offence. So we will then, as part of a PSBO, be able to make that a legal requirement, and we can involve the police if that's the case. Because what we have done in the past is we've managed to track people down through Facebook and other places, and we have taken them to court, and instead of paying a £75 fine, they've paid £1,000 or upwards. So, you know, I must come across as quite a hardliner, but I'm really not. I just think that that people have to be responsible for their own community.
Okay, Bridget.
Sorry, just an additional point that Ruth made very well earlier around our signage, and how do you get people to engage with the new messages that are out there, or the changes that have taken place. And I know that when I was the portfolio lead for environment, you know, we did that campaign with the posters that said, don't be a tosser. And it's, you know, I appreciate that it's all with good humour, but it's something that catches the eye and people think about. So we do need to get beyond the kind of, well, the poster says don't do it, so you won't do it, to use humour, to use different ways and methods to encourage, whether it's, you know, young people, younger children, that they think using the bin is fun. But we have to be creative with our messaging, otherwise people will walk past a sign and say, I never saw it. What we want is that change in behaviour. So what we need is signage and communications there on the ground that gets people talking, that gets people engaged. So I thought it was.
Bridget, I think people felt that poster, "Don't be a tosser," was aimed at some of our councillors, I'm afraid.
Okay. Right. Ruth, did you want to come back?
Yes, I did. I just wanted to point out that 3 of my residents were fined £75 for walking their dogs. And I went there and looked, and there are no signs. Whether there will be now, I don't argue, but there weren't at the time. And I'm hoping that they will be dismissed. But there were 3 of them that were fined. Outrageous. That's all.
Catherine Gibbons.
Just a quick point. I mean, like Councillor Jacobs, I've been contacted actually today by a dog owner who's concerned about the fact that no person shall take a dog or permitted a dog to enter without a lead in Hutton Moor area, which is very popular. And I'm not sure what the signage is there, but I think, you know, it would need to be very clear for people. And she makes a point, which I do sympathise with, and I'm a dog owner, and I have to do this, is that this is meaning that a lot of people are having to drive to find somewhere that they can let their dogs off and exercise, which is, as she says to me, counterproductive to our more green agenda. But I have to say, and I have said this to the lady, you know, it's one of those situations, isn't it, where the majority of responsible dog owners are paying the price for those few who are not responsible, who have dogs they can't control, they let them off the lead and they don't clear up after them. And, you know, I'm torn because I am a dog owner, but equally when it's children and sports facilities like Hutton Moor, you want to make sure that it's safe and it's clean. And therefore, you know, I am in support of these measures.
Thank you. Councillor Charles.
Hello, yeah. I just wanted to make the point, as a dog owner myself, you know, these rules have been in place for years, and the only difference is that they're actually being enforced. And I've known those rules to actually be in place for years. So I'm afraid I have little sympathy for those people who say that they have seen no signage, because if you're a dog owner, which I am, you should know of the rules.
No, don't
Thank
agree.
you.
Sorry.
Right, I'm going to go to the vote now.
Just a very quick one, Don. I'm sorry, just in answer to Catherine's point about letting the dogs off the lead, there is a change on the PSPOs that certain times of day now that the dogs will be allowed on the beaches without leads.
After 6 o'clock in the evening, I understand. Is that right? Before 6 o'clock in the morning. Lovely. As long as they haven't got a barbecue under their arm and a dog feeding bag. Okay. Right. We've got a proposition, and we've had an amendment to that proposition, which has been proposed and seconded. Shall we go to a vote? All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you, colleagues. Lovely. And we've gone to item number 13, which is the commissioning plan for the care and support provider for Diamond Court and Lakeside Court Extra Care Housing Development in Whirl. And I think Mark Canifer is going to present this in lieu of Mike Bell.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Councillor Bell again has asked me to move this recommendation on his behalf, which is to approve a commissioning plan for the care and support services at Extra Care Housing Services that we provide. The contract expires later this year, and to achieve continuity of service, it is important that we commission a new provider. Extra Care Housing is an important part of our housing mix in North Somerset, and placements provide savings to the council as they help delay or prevent more extensive residential care placements. So I recommend that to council.
The recommendation is as in the papers. It requests that the commissioning plan be approved to proceed to tender for a care and support service at Diamond Court and Lakeside Court Extra Care Housing Scheme. So I do. Mark Canifer is proposing. Do I see a seconder? Mike Solomon, thank you. Are there any comments from officers? Not hearing any. Are there anybody in the virtual world? Any colleagues physically present? Okay, it's been proposed and seconded. We'll go for the vote then. So all those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. We go on to item number 14, which is the budget monitor and financial update. Councillor Ash Cartman, please.
Thank you, Don. So I'll just focus on the recommendations. There's a couple of good news items in this, actually, which is really great. So an extra kind of £4 million from the Clinical Commissioning Group, or the CCG. Lots for social care projects, 1.2 million. And there's Healthier Together matched funding as well, which I see in the appendix includes support for the voluntary sector with a focus on debt and financial advice, which I think is very welcome given the cost of living crisis we're all facing. So that's good news. And there's also a request for delegated authority in there to officers in response to the government's UK Shared Prosperity Fund. We're expecting £3 million, but the turnaround time is such that it's important that we delegate authority to submit our plan to the government to make sure we secure that funding. So I'm in support of that. I think the other thing is to say in this, it shows that we are going to balance at the end of the year. I know this is a month 10 report, but I think given the pressures the council were under last year, that's no mean feat of achievement. So that's really good as well. Although we shouldn't pat ourselves on the back too much because we have difficult times ahead. I would perhaps just ask Amy Webb whether she'd like to add some comments as our section 151, or if not.
Thank you, Councillor Cartman. Yes, absolutely. So the month 10 budget monitoring report showing an improved revenue budget position. Also, just to note, we've made some simplifications to the report to hopefully bring out those key messages. And also the welcome addition of the funding from the CCG, but also to note that those amounts would be subject to earmarked reserves, so we'll actually push up our year-end position on the balance sheet due to the timing of those receipts. Thank you.
Right, thank you. So are you going to propose that, Councillor Cartman?
Yes, please.
Do I see a seconder? Mark Canifer, thank you. Right, so before I throw this open for debate, I think I would like to say thank you not only to the finance team, but also to all the officers within North Somerset Council, indeed our contractors, for continuing to deliver the services for our residents and keep within the budgets, and also do some incredibly challenging financial circumstances. We do appreciate it's not going to get any easier, but thank you very much for all your efforts on behalf of us all. Are there any further officer comments beyond Amy? Are there any comments in the virtual world, Nick? Questions? No. Are there any comments from colleagues? Okay, we've got a proposal and a second, so I'll go for the vote then. All those in favour of the recommendations? That's unanimous, thank you. We now go on to item 15, report of contracts awarded over £250,000 under 5 million, which are listed in the papers. Am I presenting this? It's for information, isn't it? So it's for information. It's a great read. So are there any questions, any comments from officers in the virtual world, in the real world? Okay, that's for noting. Are we all happy to note that, colleagues? We're all nodding as noting. Thank you very much, and thank you for the procurement team for getting that together. We now go on to virtually the end of the meeting. Oral reports of executive councillors. I'll go around the room. Mike Solomon, you don't have to say anything.
That was a rather pointed remark. I won't, Don, then.
Ash Cartman, Mark Caniford.
Yeah, just Chairman, I would just ask people to get quick answers into the local plan. They have 2 days left under the official consultation, and I think it's important that those are put in.
Absolutely. I had some residents emailing me about midnight about some things they'd suddenly noticed, so I said, get on and get your responses in quickly.
That's a good point, Chairman, you make. If anyone can't get that access, if they do email their councillors, they can certainly get them to me, and I'll make sure they're included in that consultation. Keep it succinct, please.
Bridget Petty? Robert Payne, while you're sat there, Robert, anything? Okay, well, let's go into the virtual world. Steve Bridger?
Nothing from me, Leader.
Nothing. Catherine Gibbons? Nicola Holland?
Nothing, thanks, Don.
Okay, lovely. Right, well, I've got two things, and it's about long service, and we lose in the next few days two very valued and long-serving members of staff. One of them is Jeff Wall from our procurement team, so if you're watching, Jeff, thank you for everything you've done, and I hope that your future is as exciting as your past has been. I'm sure it will be, if not slightly more. And also known to us very well, and now sat at the back of the room, is Sue Efford from our Democratic Services team. So Sue, I'm sure you'll be dreadfully embarrassed by this, but I'm going to insist on saying thank you very much for everything you've done. I've been on the council since 2011, and you've been a great help to me, and I know to lots and lots of other colleagues, both with our own individual questions, but also with the smooth running of so many meetings and combating amateurs like me chairing them to make sure they actually proceed in a legal and a proper manner. So thank you, Sue. You will be missed, but I'm sure you've got lots and lots of things you're looking forward to doing without having to go through committee papers. So thank you, Sue, and on a quick round of applause for everybody here. Thank you. And item number 17 is urgent business. There is none, so thank you for everybody that's joined us today, or those watching online later. Thank you very much, and I wish you all a good evening, though I do believe that we are now doing another presentation for some councillors, so thank you.